I'm a writer, and today I'm going to use a bunch of random prompts to write a story. If you want, you can write along with me because I'm going to show you every step in the process, including the actual writing. So stick with me if you want to see how this story turns out. Will it be decent, or will it be totally If you're new here, my name's Kieran. I'm a writer and a freelance editor, and I love to help writers tell their stories while having fun, so thanks for being here. Now, to help me with this challenge, I've set up some randomizer wheels that will pick the length, the POV, the setting, the plot, the time of day, and the ending of my story. However, they are only so random. I've kept all of the options limited to things that I'd vaguely consider using normally because, if possible, I'd like this finished story to actually be something I can keep and use. And a story about a haunted golf club on Pluto just isn't that. The first wheel is going to determine the length of my story. I'm keeping things pretty short here because I want to actually finish it in one session. The options are 100, 250 or 500 words, but I've also thrown in the possibility for it to be exactly that word count. So if I land on one of those, I have to hit the nail on the head. If it's one of the general ones, then a 10% variance is good enough for me. So let's see what we get. Okay, 100 words exactly. I'm quite happy with that. I'm used to writing exactly 100 word stories because I do that with microfiction fairly often, so quite happy so far. The next wheel is going to determine the perspective of the story, or the POV. Again, I'm being really general here. I'm going to keep things to first person, third person, or second person. I don't particularly mind which, though obviously I'd prefer not to get second person. Let's see what we get. Why did I say it out loud? I should have just kept it in here, but I've cursed myself to second person. That's okay, I guess. We'll make it work. In case you haven't come across second person, I'll explain a little bit about it. Second person essentially makes the reader the character of the story, or it's written that way anyway. So in a first person story, you'd say, I went to the door. In a third person, you would say, they went to the door. In second person, you say, you went to the door. So you're kind of putting the reader right into the text. It's odd, it doesn't often work, it tends to remind people of those choose your own mystery stories. However, I have got some experience in using second person because I wrote an entire novel in it a few years ago. The novel's terrible, but I got some experience. Maybe it'll help. The next wheel is going to determine the setting of the story, and I've gone a little bit broad with that too, no surprises. That might sound like a bit of a cop-out too, by the way, but the idea of this whole exercise is to get something written, not to restrict myself so much that I get nothing written. I'm already in the second person, so the options I've picked are city, rural, space, coast, and underground. I've got no preference here really. My current work in progress, my longer project, is a space thing, so might be a bit of a weird overlap there, but I could live with it. So here we go. Okay, underground, that was the last option I added because it seemed the strangest. That's fine. I'll make something up for this. I've never written anything based underground before, but it could be interesting. The next wheel was supposed to determine the time of day of the story, but considering we're basing it underground, that might not really matter that much, but I'm still going to roll it anyway. So the options here are midday, midnight, dawn, and dusk, and obviously I'm going to slide those a little bit as needed. Okay, dawn, so early morning, under the ground. The next wheel is going to determine some element of plot that I need to include. I've got nothing worked out, nothing planned ahead of time, but the options are a mystery, a secret, a moment, a parting, or a meeting. So I'm going to use these to try and prompt myself. Hopefully something comes of it. Let's spin the wheel and see. Okay, a moment. To explain what that means, My approach to writing, especially short fiction, tends to come to me, or my ideas tend to come to me in snapshots. I will see like a moment in somebody's life or some kind of event and then build a story around there, either going backwards into the past or into the future or staying in that moment, whatever the case. So in this scenario, I'm going to find some kind of moment that happens underground at dawn and hopefully build a story around that. I've got one last wheel to spin, and that's going to determine what kind of end I'm going for. The choices here are a twist, ambiguous, cyclical, so arriving back to where I started somehow, or dialogue. I just threw that in at random. I really hope I don't get twist, because that sounds like the hardest, and I've only got 100 words to do it. Let's see. Okay, I've got cyclical, so my story needs to start and end in the same place. There's certain difficulties that come along with that, but we'll see how I can make it work. All right, I'm going to get a document going and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I've opened a Google Sheets and I've put in the requirements or the criteria that we drew. So the story has to be 100 words exactly. It's in the second person. It's set underground at dawn, centered around a moment, and it's going to be cyclical, so I need to start and end at the same place. What I'm going to do now is take some time, maybe 10 minutes or so, just to try and think of some ideas, and hopefully something will actually occur to me. Right now, I feel like I've got pretty much nothing, so we'll see what happens in 10 minutes. If you want to play along and try this challenge along with me, I'll leave this criteria up on the screen, and I'd recommend taking 10 minutes to think about it too, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'll be back with you shortly. Okay, so I think I've reached the point where as far as I'm gonna get before I actually write something down. So I'll talk you through what the notes that I've made. So in terms of the setting, I've got some kind of entrance or exit or gatehouse, and then I advance that a little bit to be a lift or an elevator of some kind. I picture that being like an entrance to a mine or something like that. So I'm hitting the underground section from that. The last person, I think I tried not to make this like a post-apocalyptic thing because that's where my mind immediately went. But I think that, there's plenty of those stories around, but essentially that was all I could really muster. I'd originally intended for this to be like the person at the top of the elevator or at the bottom of the elevator sees a light in the distance, and because dawn breaks, what they thought was coming appears suddenly to be something else. That's still a possibility, could still do something with that, but I don't think it's quite snappy enough. Then I've got top of the elevator, noise below, too late, dawn breaking. So that just combines a bunch of the things I was thinking about. So the moment there, I think, will be hearing a noise from down below, which also obviously covers the underground, and it would be at dawn. I picture the character riding up the elevator or whatever and seeing light as dawn is breaking above them, and they realise too late that there is a noise below, but they can't do anything. They can't turn around or they can't go back to save whoever it is or whatever. I'm not going to go that much into detail with it, but something like that. And then I thought for the cyclical aspect, which is the really difficult bit, I'm going to have to be cyclical probably in concept or theme rather than the exact narrative, because I've only got 100 words. So I've put start with being alone, end with being alone. Don't know if that's cyclical enough, but I'd imagine this character discovering this mine perhaps at some point, and then going down alone, and then going down into it, maybe meeting people who are, a civilization down there, but by the time they come back up again, they are alone again. I don't know what's happened down in this mine. Sounds like a nightmare, but I don't know if that's cyclical enough, and I also don't think I've got space to show all of that in 100 words. And then I just reconfirm the moment that I'm planning is them hearing a call from below in the elevator. So I don't know how this is going to go, but the next thing to do is to just get going and try and write it and see what happens. So if you've hopefully had a moment to plan as well, hopefully you've got a few ideas, let's give it a go. Let's see where it takes us, and I'll meet you back after for the story. So it's been about 7 or 8 minutes, and I've come up with a first a first draft, a rough first draft, which is 90 words. So I've got a bit of stuff to play with. I've hit on the moment fairly well, or, functionally at least. So I've hit the moment, I've hit the cyclical part and the underground part, the dawn part, obviously not the word count yet, but everything else is pretty much there, and it's obviously in second person. There's a few issues though that I really need to rectify. Firstly, every sentence pretty much starts with you, which is a common issue when you're writing in second person. It kind of mimics how when you're writing in first person, every sentence can end up starting with I. Second person, the same thing happens. I think it's because third person, you have more options. It's wider. It's they, he, she, whatever. It can be wider. You can use more description and stuff like that a little more easily in third person, or a little more easily in third person than you can in second and first. It feels a little less natural to jump into description in those perspectives, second especially. So I need to rectify that. I'm kind of happy with this part because, as usual with me, things are suitably vague, a little bit vague. I don't like being too obvious about anything, but I think this is just direct enough to give you the idea that they're going up and they hear a voice from below. I think that gets across pretty well. This bit, it needs to just back up this bit just to make it a little clearer. This needs to just be there to underline this part almost. Same with the italics here, which is a bit of a cheat. And then this part I'm not happy with. I want to make this sort of a nice descriptive moment, really. Something that harks back to when this person arrived, because there needs to be more colour to this, is how I would say it. But I've got some words left to play with. And then this, again, I think needs to be a little bit more direct and a little bit more detailed. You can't tell an entire story in detail and tell the reader everything that they need to know in 100 words. You just can't really do it in the same way you could with 1,000, for example. So I need to get across the idea of something, well, not being too vague, but also not having enough words to be detailed. So I need to figure that out and rework that. This bit, I want to get across that there were people down there in these mines or whatever throughout the whole story, not just in this line, and this line will really confirm that. So I need a sense of that earlier on as well, probably during this part, I think. But that kind of casts doubt on the voice at the start if there's no fires, if the fires have all died out or whatever. The sound is in doubt. We're doubting that because that's what the story's based around, whether or not they heard a voice or you heard a voice. And then the cyclical bit, that's fine. I can just repeat the first line again. I think that'll work. So what I'm going to do is spend another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know how long, reworking this until see if I can get it into a slightly better version of what I have now. So I'll see you back after that. All right, so I've shaped up what I had into something workable and usable, and I've hit each of the points that I feel like I wanted to hit. So I'll read the story now, and then I'll talk about what I did with it and the changes that I've made. So here we go. You don't know it was a voice. You know there's a radio mounted to the elevator controls. It rattles as you ascend through the earth. You know you heard something after all this time. Above, there's light. It could be dawn. It could be air and space. A chance for something. There could be fires in the distance. There could really be voices. You passed yourself, descending. How long ago? Darkness above and darkness below as you squinted through the rattling, grated floor towards the amber flicker of something. You don't know it was a voice. So, is this my absolute best work? No, but I'm reasonably happy with what I came up with the restrictions that were on me from the random prompts. So the opening line and the ending line, obviously there is the cyclical element of the story. I'm quite happy with how that turned out. I think it works. The way I managed to get through this story is by italicizing the word something, which sounds like a really weird comment to say, I know, but this element of something kind of represents the heart of the story for me. It's this character, the you character. It's what they're searching for, or what you are searching for. By touching on it, it's kind of, I'm representing a lot of things. This could be survival. This could be, somebody else, civilization. It's all encapsulated in that one word, something. So I've touched on that at regular times when I needed to say something a lot bigger and I didn't have the words. So this line, there's a radio mounted to the elevator controls. It rattles as you ascend through the earth. This is probably the most descriptive part of the story and the bit that I'm the least happy with, because essentially after I looked at that first draft that I showed you, I realised I didn't actually say at any point it was underground. I said there was an elevator, but I could have been in a high-rise building or anything. So I knew I needed to get it, the underground element into it. So that's why I added it rattles as you ascend through the earth. I needed to get ascend in there because I needed to talk about how you descended earlier. And I changed walkie, which I had in the first draft, to radio, which sounds way better. That's okay, it's functional, it has to be there. And then, you heard something after all this time, a crackle. So I wanted to get across that this person's been down there in this mine or whatever it is for quite some time, and that they heard a crackle. I wanted to cast doubt on the sanity of this character, essentially. Above, there's light, it could be dawn. I just wanted to get the dawn part in there, and then I tied that into air and space, and I brought back that element of something. Something could be up there. There could be fires in the distance. There could really be voices. I need to maybe rework that, but that's supposed to reference the fact that we don't know it was a voice at the start of the story and at the end. It's kind of this person rationalizing that there's more chance that there'll be someone to talk to above and out and in the rest of the world than there is down in this shaft. I'd had something like you see yourself a month before. That's what I had in the first draft, and I realised that was a bit vague and a bit too writing-y. You could see my input as the author too much in that line. I wanted to change it, so instead I've just gone with you pass yourself descending, as though it's a vision of their former self. How long ago? I'm just trying to add to the situation, the mental capacity question, which casts all of this stuff into doubt. Darkness above and darkness below, as you squinted through the rattling grated floor. This again is just, I needed to fill in more details about this elevator. Essentially, I needed to add more, and I didn't want to add it to this because it would have been too much. It would have been boring. And then I gave that something one last go there, the amber flicker of something. So I'm suggesting there's fire at the bottom of this pit, which again, I've used fires to represent something, I don't know, life in the distance here too. So, and then I was coming to the end of this and I thought, how can I really come back to this point? I could have just left it as you don't know it was a voice, and I think that would have worked just fine, but I really wanted to add another level to it. So I put in another crackle from the radio, which kind of just doubles down on everything, doubles down on the ambiguity, and makes it seem like this person is in denial even, or they don't know whether to trust their own senses, and that's how it turned out. So it is exactly 100 words, which I'm happy with. It came out okay. Again, as I said, not my best work ever. I'm not going to win any awards for this. But in terms of, the brief, as it were, I feel like I pretty solidly hit it. And given more time to work on it, I could probably improve it further. And maybe I will. The point of this exercise really is to get yourself into the position where you're writing regularly and actually getting something down instead of waiting for perfection to turn up and, work through you. The way to progress as a writer is to put yourself into uncomfortable positions, to write things that you wouldn't necessarily have chosen and to make the best of them, because that really does test your skills. If you just give yourself an easy idea that you'll nail, it's not really going to help you progress that much. If you wrote a story based on this prompt, by all means, it's only 100 words, so you can probably fit it into a YouTube comment if you want to share it and be brave. Absolutely go for it. Did you know I have an editing service where you can send me your work and I'll both line edit and developmental edit it for you? It's all done through my website, so feel free to check it out. And if you want to read my work and get extra content from me and personalised answers to your writing questions and a lot more, really, take a look at my Patreon. I'd love to have you. Links for both are in the description. Thank you so much for watching, as always, and happy writing.